Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. I am your book reviewer, and today we're going to review the book Song of Susannah by Stephen King. This is the sixth book in the Dark Tower series. There are 7 total, so I'm almost done with it, which I'm excited. And so let's get started. This book starts where the 5th book, The Wolves of the Calla, left off, where if you read the 5th book or remember my review of it, the 5th book ended where the group of Roland, Eddie, Jake, Oy, Father Callahan, and Susannah had all defeated the wolves, which ended up being like vampire type things, in this city of Calaburn Springs. I hope I'm getting the city right. But anyway, it's nicknamed Calla. And then at the end of the book, Susannah, who is taken over by a being named Mia, Mia herself is pregnant, but Susannah is not. It's very confusing. But anyway, Susannah and Mia open a doorway from the midworld where the group is, into our world of New York, and that's where the book ends, and the group realizes that Susannah has gone. And I believe Roland and Eddie kind of know about Mia. I'm not sure if Jake and Father Callahan are aware, but Roland and Eddie are aware that something is wrong with Susannah and that she's being taken over by this being of Mia. So anyway, that's where book 6 starts. Like I said, Susannah has jumped into our world of New York City in the year 1999, and so the book, and then basically Jake and Father Callahan go through the doorway that Susannah went through to go get her, and then Roland and Eddie go through the doorway, but they are in another time period. They're all in our world, but they're Roland and Eddie are in different when. It's very confusing, but that's kind of the basis of it. So it's in 3 different most of the book is in 3 different perspectives. Anyway, so Susannah goes through the door first, and the being of Susannah is again being controlled by either Susannah or Mia, and it's like described as like Susannah will kind of step back into herself, and then Mia will like jump forward and take over, and vice versa. And what's kind of funny is that Susannah she is paralyzed because her legs have been cut off due to the train accident that happened in the way earlier book series. But when she is Mia, she is able to walk. And not only is she able to walk, but Susannah herself is African American, but Mia is white, or Caucasian. And so when people can see Susannah or Mia walk, and they see like an African American from the waist up and Caucasian legs. So it's very strange. But anyway, Mia goes, and she somehow gets a hold of what I'm imagining is like a real little ceramic turtle, which plays a part because it's magical, and when you hold it out to somebody, it kind of hypnotizes them and makes them do what you want them to do. She uses it on a kind of a UN diplomat because she's kind of thrown in New York City near the UN building. So she's surrounded by diplomats, and one of the diplomats tells her that, or she tells one of the diplomats, excuse me, to go secure her a room at at a nearby hotel. And because she's viewing or showing him this turtle, he is hypnotized where he doesn't. And I thought that was kind of fun. And so she is secured a home temporarily where she can, rest and kind of clean herself off from the battle that was fought in the Wolves of Calla, and kind of get herself cleaned up and figure out where she's going to go next, because Mia has her eventually going to a place called the Dixie Pig, which is a restaurant in downtown New York City, and that is eventually where Mia is going to have her baby. But Susannah is able to kind of control her body in a way when she steps back out of herself, I guess. She pictures like a machine dial, or a machine with a bunch of dials on it. And when she left the Wolves of Calla, her labor pains were starting. She was just starting to go into labor, and she sees a dial that says like labor force, and at the first time she sees this dial, it's at like an 8 out of 10, and so she realizes that those are her labor pains and that those are really coming strong. But she is able to turn the dial where it goes like to 2 or something, and so because Mia and Susannah realize that they need to have time first to go and before they have this baby, and they're able to stop the labor pains because this is real life. Anyway, but one of the also there was a switch on this machine that Susannah saw where it was about the fetus, and the fetus was switched to awake, and that was where it was like kicking and doing all sorts of things. But then she was able to turn the switch to asleep, and the fetus fell asleep. So that was where the labor pains stopped. So anyway, that's kind of where Susannah and Mia are in this trip. However, then Jake, Oy, and Father Callahan go through the door, as I said, and they're in New York City of 1999, and neither of them, none of this is where anybody was before. So the year 1999 is very strange to them, and they're like, well, this is kind of like New York, but it's very strange, and all sorts of things. So but Jake, Oy, and Father Callahan know what they need to do, and one of the things that Mia does in the hotel room is she has in her possession a crystal ball that's called the Black 13, and if you remember in the Wizard and Glass book of book 4, that was what was used by the witch, whose name I can't remember at the moment, to see into things and to control things. And so this is a very powerful ball, and Mia again has it in her possession, but Jake, Oy, and Father Callahan steal it, and they end up taking it to the World Trade Center. Again, remember, this is 1999, and they end up putting it in a base, they're underneath the World Trade Center, in like a subway system. It's end up being like a locker room type thing where they feed quarters into it that enable this thing to be in this locker until like 2002, and they're like, oh yes, nothing, it should be pretty safe there, and it should be good. And of course it's a really bad reference and a really kind of bad joke to September 11th. But regardless. But then Roland and Eddie, instead of going to New York of 1999, they end up going to a city in Maine in 1977. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this when my review of the Wolves of Calla, but I will mention it now. When they meet Father Callahan for the first time, Father Callahan tells of the story of his tale of defeating vampires in Jerusalem's Lot, which, ends up being the Stephen King book Salem's Lot, which, if you've read, you know about. Anyway, but they meet somebody who has a copy of that book, and they explain to Father Callahan, in our world, I guess, that's like, well, this seems very similar to this book that's called Salem's Lot by Stephen King, and your name is mentioned in it. And so Father Callahan kind of realizes that he's kind of a character in this man Stephen King's mind. And but then Roland and Eddie kind of think, oh, well, this Stephen King is kind of, since he already knows about what happened in Jerusalem's Lot, he should be like this powerful guy. He must be this really important guy who we need to talk to. So they end up going, again, they're in Maine of 1977, and they end up talking to somebody who knows Stephen King, or at least knows where he lives. And so they go, Roland and Eddie go to Stephen King's, which was the funniest thing in this book because Stephen King himself wrote himself as a character. It was very strange, but it was very fun. Back in like 1977. So this was, when like Carrie was written, when Salem's Lot was written, and when like The Shining was written. This is very early in Stephen King's career. And if you know anything about him, this 1970, it was like mid or to late 70s when he wrote the first book of The Gunslinger, but at the time when Roland and Eddie meet him, which they do, he hadn't written it yet. It was all in his head, because Stephen King takes one look at Roland and freaks out. It was just really funny to read, and it would be really funny for any like diehard Stephen King fan like myself. But they have a conversation with him, and where again they kind of realize that their ideas in his head, but they are like, this is important because he's going to be like the ruler of our destiny type of thing. And so they tell him to, to write the books and keep writing them and things like that. And Roland and Eddie don't go to New York 1999, or at least in this book, but when the book ends, Mia and Susannah have reached the Dixie Pig, and where they realize, or she doesn't realize, but I think Father Callahan kind of realizes that the people who are in the Dixie Pig who want this baby are vampires. And so they go, Father Callahan, Jake, and Oi go to the Dixie Pig also to fight the vampires and to save Mia. That doesn't happen yet. That's kind of where the book ends, where Mia finally gives birth to her baby. And again, that's kind of the end of the book, so I'm assuming that's where book 7 will start. One of the things that was also kind of fun was at the end of the book, they had a diary by Stephen King. I have no idea if it's like the author's real diary or kind of, written as the character in the book. It started in like 77 and goes to 1999. And it basically is like when he started, it's chronicles him writing The Dark Tower. And it was just really fun to read. It ended with his accident where he got hit by the truck. because that happened in 99. Or Van, excuse me. And in the book, it made it seem like Stephen King had died. It was a newspaper article. I don't think it was real, but it could have been. Anyway, again, it was good, but it was very strange, again, because this whole series is kind of strange, like I've been saying. So, anyway, that's it. I'm not going to read the last book quite yet. I'm going to read this book given to me by my sister that's called The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. Gosh, I hope I'm getting that right. Anyway, and so that's the book I'm going to read and review next. So I bid you all a farewell and happy reading.